Well, I have 7 o'clock, so welcome. We're going to begin tonight. So glad you're all here. My name is Noni Strand. I chair the Lutherans Restoring Creation Mission Table for the Central State Synod, and I'd like to start with a brief prayer this evening. Let us pray. Thank you, good God, for all the gifts we have already received from your creation this day. Because the creation is yours and you love it, help us to love it more dearly. Amen.
Amen.
That comes from one of our resources that we're going to be talking about tonight. Well, it's so good to see you all here. And since we're in a manageable size, I wondered if we could just take a couple minutes to introduce ourselves and say where we're from. So I'll start, and then when you're done, just call on another person to introduce. So I'm Noni Strand. I introduced myself. I actually attend Overland Park Lutheran in Olathe, Kansas. So Steve Couch.
Hi, I'm Steve Couch. I am at First Lutheran in Topeka, Kansas. And Randy, you want to take it next?
Sure, except I'm Beth Kallstrom. This is my husband's iPad, so it's in his registration. So I'm Beth Kallstrom, and I am a member at Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Kansas City, Missouri. Melody.
I'm Melody Blowbaum, and I'm also a member at Emmanuel Lutheran Church. Jean?
I'm Jean Nurnberger. I three am a member of Emmanuel Lutheran Church in Kansas City, Missouri. Susan.
I'm Susan Meyer, and I attend Faith Lutheran in Cockeysville, which is near Baltimore, Maryland. Cheryl, did you already just go with that group? Cheryl?
No, I'm Cheryl Meerhoff, and I'm from Columbia, Missouri, St. Andrew's Lutheran Church. Oh, I'm supposed to call on somebody. How about Cindy?
Hi, I'm Cindy Gross from Bethel Lutheran Church in St. Louis, Missouri. And I'm not sure if there's anybody else who hasn't been called on. Well, I see Lisa.
Yeah, Lisa and David and Jim. Oh, and Jay and Bob too.
Yeah.
So are you calling on me?
Yes, Lisa.
Yes,
Sorry, I'm sitting in the dark. So I'm Lisa Bren Skelly from Houston, Texas, member of Christ the King. And who did you say hadn't been called on?
How about Dee and Bob?
All right, you're next.
Thanks. Dee Morin from Holy Cross Lutheran Church in Creve Coeur, Missouri. Bob?
Bob Morin, same.
And
Jim?
Yeah.
Or James?
I'm Jim Brandt. I am associated both with First Lutheran and with Salem in the Kansas City area on the Kansas side.
Great. And then David.
I'm David Whirling. I'm from Faith Lutheran, another faith church in Little Rock, Arkansas.
Wonderful.
And let's see, who did Lisa?
I think we got everyone.
We did? Okay.
Well, as you can see, we have a nice mix of folks from the Central State Synod and across the ELCA. So it's delightful to have you all here tonight. Just to give you a little history about how this came into being, about 9 months to a year ago, we had a group of congregations that formed a Cool Congregations cohort. And our mission was to use some materials from the Interfaith Power and Light in order to help reduce our carbon emissions in our congregations and how to measure that. So we have been meeting for every month for about 9 months. And then as a part of this effort, we found that we wanted to expand to include more people and perhaps a broader range of resources so that everyone in any different kind of setting might be able to take advantage of this resource that we share. So we have a new year, and our Lutherans Restoring Creation mission table has put together this 2024 creation care plan that we hope can continue to help congregations reduce greenhouse gas emissions, but also introduce us to a number of additional resources that might be helpful. Because we recognize that every different congregation and every ministry is kind of in a different place with regard to their creation care ministry. So we hope that we can continue to connect people with what's helpful, provide speakers and information on subjects that might be of interest, and I think most importantly, share what you're doing in your setting that can be helpful to someone else. Some of you have worked out some bugs in some systems, and that would be very helpful for others to know. So we are shifting from the Cool Congregations cohort to the Creation Care collaboration. So thank you all for being here tonight. If you would like me to put you on our distribution list for email, if you could just drop your email in the chat. I have some of you already, but if you don't know if I have yours and you want to be on that distribution list, just drop it in the chat and I'll save the chat so I can add you. We will meet every month, the second Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m. If you can't be here, that's fine. We always record it. And then Tim in the Synod office helps us to post it online. And I'll send out the link to everyone who's on the distribution list. So feel free to invite others to be a part of this. Tonight, we're going to introduce the plan, and we're going to look at the first January and February to get people started. And then each month after that, we'll look a month ahead to the resources. A couple of our people who are here tonight are going to share about some of the resources that they've used in their congregation and how that's worked, and might be helpful for you to envision how that might work in your setting. Any questions before we get to the plan itself? All right. So this is the website for the Lutherans Restoring Creation mission table for the Central State Synod. And it has a link here that you can download the plan right here, this little download button. And then we've also curated all the links so that each month there are different links that are highlighted in the plan, and that I'll show that to you as we go through. So if you want to just get to a link and you don't want to go through the whole plan, all of these links are noted here. And then the Zoom, and we'll continue to keep that Zoom link in here because we'll use the same one each month. There's also a little thing about sharing your story, and I'll have more to say about that as we go along. But I'm going to go ahead and share a different screen. So just to give you an idea, the first page just kind of introduces what we're trying to do. There are so many resources that come for creation care, and it can be a little bit overwhelming. So some of the resources that we've listed in the plan come from members of our mission table. Things that they've either used in their own congregation or things that they've heard of, things that they've been successful with, so that you can know that we've tried some things and it might be a place for you to get started. Now, by no means is our plan exhaustive. There are so many resources out, but we thought it might be a way for, especially if you haven't gotten too much going on in your congregation yet. We organize each month by the 5 areas of congregational life from Lutherans Restoring Creation: worship, education, buildings and grounds, advocacy and public witness, and personal discipleship. And then some of the months we have a digging deeper resource because we had just more to share and we wanted to share that with you. So don't feel like you have to stay on a certain month. We encourage you to look around, especially for those of you who plan ahead. It's helpful to know that You can look ahead at September and season of creation and already get started on that, for example. We also are open to have many suggestions from the people that use it across the Synod and across the ELCA, so that if you have good ideas that you'd like to add, we're very excited to add those to the plan or for next year's plan. So here's January, just to give you an example of how this is organized. We tried to, we follow the church year. So we just celebrated Epiphany, and sometimes our suggestions are very broad and include lots of things. Sometimes, like, for example, with the worship suggestion here, it's a hymn. It doesn't have to be an entire worship service. Don't feel like you have to do everything all at once. But this is a way for us to think about light as a part of God's creation. And the first lesson from this past Sunday was the beginning of creation and the creation of light. So a hymn like Joyous Light of Heavenly Glory, with the words tweaked a bit to address the morning rather than the evening, might be something that you could use in your congregation. Another resource for those who are trying to ground everything in scripture and theology, this comes from the Lutherans Restoring Creation. So the green text that is in the plan links you to the link that's named. And that's also listed on that list of links after the plan that I showed you on the website. So this 10 Reasons resource goes through our Lutheran theology and how creation care connects with all of that. So that might be a good way for some people to get started in their particular context. Buildings and grounds is, of course, an area where you can do lots and lots of different things. The suggestion for this month is to shift old light bulbs into LED lighting. It not only saves money, but it also reduces energy usage. And now that it's getting harder and harder to find old light bulbs, it will reduce frustration. One of the things you can think about as you think about changing lighting, especially in your congregation, is check with your local energy company. I know, like on the Missouri side of our synod, there are Evergy has opportunities to get free light bulbs. Now, it doesn't happen on the Kansas side, but in the Missouri side, and I know one of our congregations in the Kansas City metro area, they got all their lighting free. They did their own installation, so it basically cost them nothing to change all their lighting in their congregation to LED. So be sure to check with your energy company to see what kind of energy saving efficiencies they have available and things that they can help pay for. I know that Kansas will be starting some. They did pass an initiative to increase energy efficiency projects, but it won't be coming till probably around March. Another thing to think about as we do creation care in our contexts is to think about how can we advocate for systems that are more earth-friendly and people-friendly. Are in the Kansas and Missouri, and it probably very similar in other states, the state legislatures have just begun meeting. And so check out their websites, find out what the priorities are going to be. Maybe there are places where you can be doing some advocacy work with your local legislators. I know here in Kansas, we will be having an advocacy day, which I will include this link in with the recording of tonight. There's going to be an advocacy day for issues about the environment on Monday, February 5th. And so I'll send out some more information about that if people are interested in attending that in Topeka. This month's personal discipleship has to do with recycling. Many people do recycling. Plastics are a huge issue because so often you don't know what to recycle, what you can't recycle. This recycling poster shows some things. Now, they used to have a link with this on their website that you could go to your specific location, but it's changed since we put this in the plan. But there is a way to check with your local areas to see what is recyclable and also where you can recycle other things, like those bags you get at the grocery store. If you still get a plastic bag, oftentimes you can recycle those back at the grocery store. But this bag and film recycling.org gives some really good information about how to recycle bags, which can be plastic, which can be such a bugaboo when we talk about recycling. And then the Digging Deeper is a set of bulletin inserts that comes from Creation Justice Ministries. There's a way to sign up for this. And then each month, for each week, it has ways to care for creation. Lots of really good ideas. If you're already doing some things in your congregation, this may be a resource that you're really interested in. It's free. All of these things so far are free as well. Any questions about January's resources? Okay, we're going to go to February, and then I'll give some folks a chance to share what they're doing in their settings. First, from worship, the Earth Gospel, a guide to prayer for God's creation. That was the book that I shared the prayer out of. This is a lovely resource that has tons and tons of prayers, scripture passages, reflections, and things for meditation. It might be something that you want to use in your worship. It might be something to use for a Lenten worship service. Here, I'll show you a picture of it. Here's the sighting of it itself. But it's a really user-friendly and very gentle way to introduce creation care concepts in worship. So that might be something that could be of use in your context. The next one, I'm going to turn this over for Cheryl Merhoff to talk about. She's the one that found this great book, Wild Hope, Stories for Lent from the Vanishing. And I've asked Cheryl if she would share with all of us how they utilized that in their congregation last Lent. Cheryl?
Yeah, let's play the video that's on this page. It's a good introduction.
Hello, my name is Gail Boss, author of Wild Hope, Stories for Lent from the Vanishing. It's a book that aims to do what you do every day, to engage the religious imagination for the sake of our holy, groaning planet. As farmer, poet, and culture critic Wendell Berry reminds us, we only save what we love. We don't come to love anything by merely knowing the facts about it. We come to love any creature by being drawn into his, her, its story. As important as it is to learn the facts about climate change and species extinction, we won't act on those facts, changing our lives, until we come to love our other than human kin by being immersed in their stories. Wild Hope offers 25 such stories for Lent. Stories of pangolins and polar bears, olms, lemurs, leopards, creatures magnificent, intricate, delicate, and now vanishing at a rate faster than any other time in Earth's history. In each of the 900-word story reflections, I try to describe the amazingness of an endangered animal, and also the particular peril facing it. I also describe the people devoted to protecting this creature. These stories can thaw our stiff hearts and wake us to a broader, deeper compassion, the compassion we were made for, which is what Lent which means springtime, has always been for. The stories can also wake in us a wild hope that from all this death and ruin, something new can rise. The promise of Lent is that something new will rise. In fact, as these stories also attest our hope, the wild is not impossible and is already loose in the world. Faith communities and Earth Care nonprofits have used Wild Hope with their participants in a variety of ways. Small groups have read the book as a way to deepen their love for other creatures and for each other, refreshing their exhausted hearts. Whole congregations have used the book as a focus for their times of lamentation and confession during their services in Lent. Families have read the book together, learning about the extinction crisis, while at the same time offering to readers young and old an opening for hope. Knowing your own people, you'll know best how to offer them the book. I hope you'll join me this Lent in deepening our love and our grief and our hope for a compassionate future with our animal kin through a reading of Wild Hope, Stories for Lent from the Vanishing.
We used this book at St. Andrews during Lent of 2021. I had just learned about Gail Boss through, she was a guest speaker with Phoebe Morad with our National Lutherans Restoring Creation group. And she was at that time talking about her first book, All Creation Waits, Advent Mystery of New Beginnings. And at that time, it was also made known that she just was releasing this book. And so it sounded like a wonderful opportunity to use during Lent. And so we ended up using this as a book discussion with our people. Because things were still pretty much only by Zoom, that's how we handled our book discussion. We had our discussions on 3 Wednesday nights that followed our Zoom Lenten evening service. And we had about 30 people participate over the 3-week period of time who attended either all of them or some of the sessions. We were lucky because since the book was just coming out, the author, Gail, was willing to do a meet the author. So we were so blessed that she was able to be there for our first session. And we had a full hour with her as she talked about some of her, the animals in the book, and then also how she came to write the book and answered questions and so forth. So that was wonderful. And then, as she mentioned, the book is set up, it has 25 stories of 25 different endangered animals. And the first one is for Ash Wednesday. And then for each of the weeks of Advent, there's a set of 4 stories. And you can read them whenever you want to during that week. And then the last week, during Holy Week, there's specific animals that are or stories that are labeled for each of the days in Holy Week. So it was it's a little bit different format. So the way we chose to do it is we had the 3 sessions, and then because of our calendar limits, we had only 2 other discussion times. So the second session we read all of the stories for the first 2 weeks of Lent, and then we met. And then the next 2 weeks later, we met and talked about the 3rd and 4th groups of animals. And then the last groups of animals, we figured people, would already have a good sense of things to think about as they read the stories. When we considered using this book, I felt it was a really good match with the 5 areas of that Noni has mentioned before that are with the covenant with creation or congregational life. So first of all, the book does help us in the education area. I might mention that before we started reading the book, I sent out these questions for people to think about as they read each of the animal stories. First of all, in education, what does this creature reveal about our creator? And then what human activities are jeopardizing this creature's life? It certainly fits with personal covenant because the question is, do I need to make changes in my personal lifestyle choices at home and work? And we did do a lot of talking about that, and we did make a list of ideas we had about what aspects of our life we wanted to change. For example, some of us decided we're going to start looking at all labels and not either eliminating or reducing any products that have palm oil in them. Another one is that people definitely said they were going to do is to look at labels for sunscreen and make sure that it didn't contain a couple of very toxic chemicals. The biggest one is oxybenzone. And just a single drop in 4 million gallons of water is enough to endanger organisms such as coral and algae and so forth. So I think from the book discussion, people did start making some lifestyle changes, or at least thinking about it, as well as our connection with all of God's beautiful creatures. And then the third area that definitely comes up is advocacy. At the back of the book is a wonderful resource in the afterword. And for every single one of the 25 animals, there are a list of 2 to 4 different organizations that relate to that animal, either ones that will help you if you want more information about the animal, or if you want to find out what kinds of questions scientists are trying to discover about the particular animal, and then as well as the conservation and groups that are trying to protect the animals. So I felt it was a really wonderful series, and it's definitely a great one to do for Lent because, first of all, since Lent is about grieving and lamenting, it's like we were lamenting how many different animals are disappearing at such a fast rate, and it's all due to our human activities and our choices. And so then the second part of repentance is also turning in new directions. And so I think that also did come up through our discussion, like what were some, we made lists, like I said, of things that we would like to change in our lifestyles. So that's a little bit about how we did it at our church. And as I said, we had about 30 people participate over the 3 sessions. And I'll put my email address in the chat. If you decide to use it in your congregation, I'd be happy to share the discussion questions that we did during our 2 Zoom discussions. We did sort of a whole group activity with a prayer at the beginning. Then we did have breakout sessions with 3 questions that I posed, and then we got back together in the whole group and shared our answers to those questions. And then we ended with a prayer. So that's how I organized the Zoom aspect of it. So feel free if you have any other, any questions about how we did it, or if you'd like me to share those questions with you. Another thing that I ended up doing, for me personally, it was really started me on the pathway of understanding how we're connected with all of God's creation. And I created a visualization for weeks 3 and 4 that includes all the animals and how our breath connects us all. I know visualizations aren't everybody's cup of tea, but if you're interested in doing that, or if you think your people might be interested in doing that, I'm willing to share that with you as well. So again, I'll put my email up in the chat. So thank you. And if you have any other questions now, I'll try to answer them.
Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl's a member of our mission table, and she is an absolute fountain of ideas and creativity in every aspect. So she is such a gift to the church. Lisa Brent Skelly, you have a question.
Actually, I don't have a question. I just wanted to make a comment.
Sure.
It's a fabulous book, Cheryl, and I'm glad that you included it in your Lenten resources. But I wanted to mention that I actually used it for a small group book study during the season of creation. And it also worked very well for the season of creation. And I think specifically because it showed very clearly how everything connects to everything else, right? As Cheryl was pointing out. So if it doesn't fit with your Lenten plans, you could consider using it during season of creation, which is what I did with it. Because I had something else planned for Lent, so it didn't fit. So I used it for season of creation, and that worked very well. And I also want to put in a plug for her Advent book. I used that for an Advent book discussion group, and it was also an excellent resource. So just a plug for Gail Boss's books.
And she also just this Christmas season came out with a beautiful children's version of that Advent book. And so I have it on my list of things, possible things to buy as presents for the little ones in my family.
And that is listed in December so that you have the reference to that as well. So any other questions for Cheryl? Oh, Dee and Bob.
Yeah, I just wondered, Cheryl, when you met your 2 times, how long did you meet then total?
They were just an hour. We tried to keep it right at 1 hour. And so we thought that was best since many of the people had already just been to church.
Yeah, thank you.
It looks like somebody asked a question in the chat.
Okay, thank you. I forget to look there. Oh, a visualization. The question is, what is a visualization? It's it is a meditation of sorts. And in this one, I asked people to just close their eyes, and then I led people through thinking about how our breath connects to every one of the creatures. And so like as we breathed in, I had people think about, as you're breathing in, the monarch butterfly is also breathing, and she can smell a flower in a field that's a half mile away, that type of thing. And so we took slow breaths, and as we took each breath, I had a sentence that helped us all think about, okay, this creature is also breathing, and what does this breath mean to them, and how is it connected to all of us? So I hope that gives you a little bit of a taste what a visualization is.
Cheryl, could you share with me those questions and all those things you mentioned? And what I'll do is I can send it out to everybody too, if that way everybody would have that information. Is it easy for you to put that together?
Well, I did make PowerPoints for those two, and I'll just pull it from there.
Perfect.
So that I can do that.
Yeah, then I'll just include it with the recording, and that way everybody can have access to it.
Noni, I got one question, Cheryl. Our congregation, even though we're doing a lot of these things, like, with the lights example and stuff like that, integrating creation care into our regular services and worship is a new thing. And, I love that book. I mean, just, what you're saying is just real beautiful. But did you say that was done in your midweek services, or when did this occur? What's the context?
In 2021, if you remember, things were still fairly locked down. And so almost all the church activities that we had were still by Zoom. And so our Wednesday evening Lenten service was by Zoom at 6:15, I think it was. And then, so we scheduled the 3 times that we met regarding this book, following that at 7 o'clock, from 7 to 8.
So let's say like a church like our own, which would like to introduce that kind of thing, but we don't have a large membership anymore. It might be a good idea maybe to do this, like a Zoom Ash Wednesday service, and focus on that for the weeks of Lent. I mean, because we'd also like to bring in people too that might, be outside our church. I mean, of course, right now we don't know where that would go, but I see greening as a real, as, the greening of growth too in our congregation, because we need growth again in our congregation. So, but,
Oh, there's many ways to use the book. At the very simplest level, it's a great just family or personal meditation book because you have the stories for each week of Lent. And so just at that level, it's really still a good resource for congregations just to introduce it and maybe make it available to like the links of how to order the book and that sort of thing. And then maybe even just have one meeting to just talk about what was your experience with the book. That's another possible way. So
like a
it
book
really
club
is
kind of
very
thing,
flexible.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, well, we're going to move on because I want to give Steve and Kathy a chance to, I'm just going to share again real quickly to share where this is in the plan. So in February, we have the Buildings and Grounds is using Interfaith Power and Light's Cool Congregations program. And I'm going to turn this over to Steve and Kathy, if Kathy can join us too, so that he can talk about their experience and how their creation care efforts have just exploded. So everybody needs a Steve and Kathy.
Kathy, unfortunately, is on the phone with someone in a conversation that can't be interrupted right now. So
that's okay.
My better half is not joining us. You have to put up with me. In any case, last year we decided to try to start a green team at First Lutheran in Topeka. There had never been anything like that at this church before, and we were very interested in cool congregations, and I think we were with you all at the beginning, weren't we, Noni?
Yes.
And it was extremely helpful to give us a grounding, and I had a start in our plans of what to do and how to go about this from scratch. And Cool Congregations had a lot of material that we were able to use, as did Interfaith Power and Light, Lutherans Restoring Creation. So we thought we had a very good set of materials to plan a start for our group. We held a meeting not really knowing how many people would show up. There might have been 3 or 4 of us that we expected, and there was between 12 and 24 people. So the interest was more than we expected, and we were very pleased with that. The ideas were more than we expected either. We opened the floor up, of course, to various ideas that people had about what projects they'd like to do, and sorted through all of that, and decided a couple of things. One was to start really with Buildings and Grounds, because you can see results there. Everyone can see results there, and one doesn't have to get too conceptual about it all. So we began very small. We had reinstituted coffee hours after our Sunday service, after we came back together when COVID let up. But we were using plastic materials for that. Well, we decided let's stop the styrofoam coffee cups. And one Sunday we just got the China cups together and put them out and used them, and got some surprise folks, and most of them were pleased with that. We got some grumbling about it because, well, we have to wash them now, but that passed. So now we're moving on to China plates, and just doing little things like that help. From there, we also moved to some bigger plans and used the energy audit that was put forth by Interfaith Power and Light and explained so well to Cool Congregations by Lisa. We found that to be very helpful. and took that audit and found, no surprise, that electricity was our main usage of the resources. In fact, we found that we were spending somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 a month on our electric bill, and wondered, well, how are we going to cut back on that? One project which we had already been instituting was to put in a better HVAC system in part of our building, which should which will help our usage. But we wanted to go further than that and had some support for looking into solar panels for the church. So we proceeded to do some research on that. And in fact, we solicited 4 companies to give us 6 proposals at the end of last year. And we are now sorting through those proposals to see, first of all, which one makes the most sense for us, and second, how we're going to be able to afford this. So this is still in progress. It has quite a bit of support, and we're hoping that we can bring this to fruition this year. But we certainly found that our association with Cool Congregations gave us a start and an opening to find all sorts of resources that have been very helpful at all levels of buildings and grounds that we've started to institute. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have now, or if you want to send me any questions you come up with later, I'd be glad to respond.
Steve, this idea of a green team, you said you had the green team was your initial conception.
Yes.
I really like that because, you know, if you have a permanent green team, you could go beyond just, you know, buildings and grounds too. You could have a worship component of it. And in other words, something that could sort of flow through it as a leading team in your congregation to channel your energies. Because, you know, I mean, like our church, for example, you know, we just replaced all the LED bulbs, but we didn't celebrate it, you know. I mean, no, okay, you know, half the congregation probably wasn't even aware they changed all the fluorescent bulbs. And wow, you know, it went well with us, you know, and I'm proud of Chuck, who was a man in charge. But you know, it's sort of like, you know, all this has to go back and forth, and you know, and sort of building on the future by having one standing team.
Right.
Yes, we
Dee and Bob?
found that be very helpful. Well, we looked at our committee structure, and we have loads of committees, but we thought, no, we really need something that falls between the different committee jurisdictions and does focus just on the environmental aspects. So that's why we decided on a green team, and we're really happy we did. They're named Earth First, by the way, by one of their members. So, but we think that's it's an approach that's really worked well for us.
Dee and Bob, you have your hand up.
Yeah, just to build on David's question and your comments, Stephen. So have your green team members stayed active? So you started out, you said, with like 15 or 20 people that showed up. Has your green team stayed connected and active and involved? And
yes, mainly they have. There have kind of been a couple levels of involvement. As we kind of expected, there were some members of the team who have been very active in the longer haul, maybe, you know, a handful, half a dozen maybe, who have been very active and continually. And there are others from the initial group and even expanding beyond that who have shown an interest and responded to various initiatives that we've put out. For example, we had a meeting of Green Team and friends, basically. I think it was in November, to bring folks up to date on where we stood with the proposals for solar panels and to present what we had at that point to them. And we filled the conference room to overflowing with that. There's a lot of interest in it. And our next, our planned next move with it, we've basically whittled down the proposals to one that we're kind of favoring. And there's a church that used this company to install solar panels in Topeka. So we have a representative from that church and a representative from the solar company coming to speak at a congregational meeting in a couple of weeks. And we are hoping to have a large number of people there to respond and go over pros and cons that they have at that point. So I'd say, the people who initially responded with interest, they've stayed at least a handful of them have stayed very active. The larger group has remained active when called upon, and we've gotten a lot of interest even from beyond the initial group.
Cheryl, question?
No, I was just going to say that we have a green team. We named ourselves the Creation Keepers Ministry. And so each year we try to plan one or more activities in each of those 5 areas that we've been mentioning. And so I think it is good to have that focus throughout the congregation. And as it says, there's a planning handbook on the Lutherans Restoring Creation website that we used after we had an initial set of, we did the 4 lessons that go with comparing our social statement to Laudato Si. And it was very timely because our Synod had also passed a resolution about encouraging congregations to become caring for creation congregations. And so the people that attended those forums agreed that, yes, let's do this. And so we took it to the council, and we have a covenant that the council signed with a covenant with creation. And so this, I think, does give us some focus that, we're committing ourselves to each year planning something in each of those 5 areas, whether it's little or big.
Yeah, we've signed the Covenant of Creation too. I found that to be a good document for discussion and eventually for commitment. Fortuitously, I'm president of council at the church this year.
That helps too.
That helps a bit. So I've
I'll
been able to twist some
I'll
arms.
include a link for that too. So that's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also want to put in a plug. Lisa is having a class. If you want to say a little bit more about, if you really want to dig down deep into cool congregations, and she's going to have a class. Lisa, you want to say anything about that?
Sure. For those who are interested, and I would say that this class applies equally to established green teams, which some of you have, as well as those who are just getting started, because it will give you structure, which in my experience of running green teams is actually the most difficult thing to come by, is to have structure around what you're doing. And it's a real gift. So I'm launching what I'm calling the Cool Congregations Cohort. And it's going to be a monthly class throughout 2024. And class is maybe not the right word. It's really more of a workshop, I guess is the best way to put it. I'm the facilitator, and any congregation that participates, I am going to assist them to do 2 things over the course of the year. The first thing is to create a plan to incorporate care for creation into everything that they do as a congregation, whether that's worship or education or public ministry, whatever. So that's the first aspect. The second aspect of the program is I will also aid all of the participating congregations to develop a plan to reduce their carbon footprint for their faith community by 50% by 2030, because that's what scientists say we all need to do. And doing that by doing ad hoc this, ad hoc that, ad hoc the other, it's going to be hard to meet your target if you don't actually look at it rigorously and come up with a specific plan so that you know you're investing your time and your money in the areas that are actually going to have the greatest reduction in emissions. And this portion is actually based on a class that I run for individuals that Noni's very familiar with. Because all of us, households and individuals, also need to reduce our carbon footprint by 50% by 2030. So I run another class I call Living the Change for you to develop that plan for your household. And I'm offering it again. So the Cool Congregations cohort will be the third Monday of every month at 7 p.m. Central, starting the 15th. And the Living the Change, for those who might be interested, will be starting up again on January 16th on Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Central. Join the program, you will leave with a plan to achieve that 50% reduction. People think that that's really daunting, but when you start digging in, I think Noni can speak to it. When you start digging in, you can definitely come up with a plan to do that 50% reduction. And just a tiny bit of further motivation for individuals and households. The estimate that I saw recently is that 25 to 30% of the emissions reductions that are needed overall need to come from households and individuals. So it really does, it's really important that we all reduce our carbon footprint in our homes and in our faith communities. So that's what the Cool Congregations cohort is going to be about. And that's the Living the Change class, which is for households / individuals, if you may have interest in that, I guess on a more personal level.
Thanks,
Any
Lisa.
questions, comments?
So you're doing something right afterwards here now, in your first class, you say, or is that?
Next week, it begins on
Next
the
week,
15th,
okay.
and it's on Mondays. So the Cool Congregations cohort for faith communities to do those two plans, the plan to incorporate creation care into everything you do, and the plan to reduce your faith community carbon footprint. That's the third Monday at 7 p.m. Central, starting January 15th, because that's the third Monday in January. And then the Living the Change, if you want to reduce your household carbon footprint or create a plan to reduce your household carbon footprint, that's Tuesdays at 6 p.m. beginning the 16th. And I can post the links in the chat.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I can include
do that.
those. Yeah, and I'll include those in the notes. Well, we're drawing close to our time. So a couple things. You remember there was the Share the Story link? Well, thanks to Thrivent, we have a little action grant. So the first 12 people or congregations who submit a story get a special gift from Lutherans Restoring Creation Mission Table. You will get a package of fair trade coffee from Equal Exchange, these hand-woven mug rugs in the color of the earth, and a guide for conversation called A Cup of Joe for Mother Earth, so that it helps create conversation among people, especially if there are disagreements. And so ways that you can share and open up conversation and build relationships over a cup of coffee, so that when we get to things like climate change that might be more difficult, those relationships are strong and we can work through it together. So that's the Share the Story. Don't forget, you can be one of the first 12. And then the second thing, are there any, David, you had mentioned a little bit about worship. Are there any other particular things you'd like to hear someone speak about? Or what we'll do next month is we'll go through March. We won't have 2 months to cover, so we'll have a little bit more time. But I'll also get people like Cheryl and Steve to give personal experiences. Is there anything in particular that would be of help to you?
Well, I don't know if this is relevant because I'm not a big advocacy person. I'm David here. But I just noticed in Arkansas legislature, they have proposed a new law that is basically going to, your solar power will retroactively be pushed back to wholesale prices, as opposed to, you're getting retail, credits and, for the purchase of their solar system, which rather upsets those who are advocating solar power. So be aware of what's going on in your legislatures.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about that next time.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just
Okay.
brought that up.
But thank you. That's helpful to know. Okay. Just making a note. Anything else for the good of the night? Well, it's so great to have you all here, and thank you. Thanks for those who shared. Thanks for great questions. I think we are stronger when we work together, and it does matter what we do individually as well as in congregations. So the potential is great among all of us, and the call is even greater. So more power to all of you in your settings. If I can be of help, I can also connect you with resources. We have wonderful people on our mission table that are willing, and we have loads of resource people across the ELCA. It's quite exciting. So please join us next month as you're able. And in the meantime, give me an email or a call if there's anything I can do. God bless you. Stay warm, stay safe, and love the earth. Oh, that was my last thing. Next time we meet the night before Valentine's Day. So I have this little thing. It says, it's the little guy hugging the earth. It says, I love the earth. So that'll be we'll be on Valentine's Day Eve next month.
So
Thank you. Oh, yes.
Thank you for calling us together, Noni. Really appreciate it. And it's good to just hear ideas and start conversations.
Thank you. And it's just, this just warms my heart to see us all together. So please come back. Okay.
Thanks, Noni.
Good night,
Thanks,
everyone.
Noni. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.